Commander Vextal stood in the corner of the mess hall like a statue made of gray stone. His 4 eyes moved slowly across the room, watching the humans eat their evening meal. The sounds they made disgusted him. They laughed with food in their mouths. They closed their eyes and made little noises of happiness when they tasted something they liked. It was weakness. Pure weakness. He had been on this human ship for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks of watching these soft creatures indulge themselves. 3 weeks of standing guard while they wasted time on something as simple as eating. On his homeworld, the Karathi Empire, meals took exactly 4 minutes. You opened a packet of nutrient paste. You consumed it. You returned to duty. There was no talking. There was no pleasure. There was only efficiency. The ship was called the Starward Hope. Vextal thought it was a foolish name. Hope was not a strategy. Hope did not win wars. But humans seemed to love the word. They painted it on walls. They said it to each other when times were hard. They acted like hope was something real, something you could hold in your hands. Captain Nick Torres walked over to him. The captain was a tall man with dark hair turning gray at the sides. He had kind eyes, which Vextal found suspicious. Leaders should not have kind eyes. Leaders should have eyes that made others afraid. "Commander," Nick said with a small nod. "You're not eating again." "I do not require your food," Vextal replied. His voice came through a translator box on his chest. The box turned his native language into human words. It made him sound flat and mechanical, but he did not care. "I have my own supplies. Nutrient paste." Nick made a face. "I've seen you eat that stuff. It looks like wet concrete. It contains everything my body needs. Nothing more. Nothing less." Nick smiled and shook his head. "You know, there's more to eating than just staying alive." Vextal did not answer. He had heard this argument before. Humans always wanted to explain why their way was better. They wanted everyone to be like them, soft and happy and weak. But the Karathi had conquered 100 worlds. They had never lost a war in 3 centuries. They did not need lessons from humans. Across the room, a woman was carrying a tray of fresh bread. The smell hit Vextal before he could prepare himself. It was warm and rich, and somehow golden, if a smell could have a color. Something in his chest moved, just for a moment. He pushed it down immediately. The woman noticed him looking. She changed direction and walked toward him. She had brown hair tied back in a messy knot, and a smile that seemed too big for her face. Her name was Emma Dawson. She was the ship's morale officer and head chef, which Vextal thought was the most useless job he had ever heard of. "Commander Vextal," she said cheerfully, "I made fresh bread today. Would you like to try some?" "No, it's really good. I used my grandmother's recipe. She taught me to bake when I was 7 years old, in her little kitchen back in Ohio. The secret is to let the dough rise twice and to add just a tiny bit of honey." Vextal stared at her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because food has stories," Emma said. "Every recipe comes from somewhere. Every meal means something. When you eat my grandmother's bread, you're tasting her love. You're connected to everyone who ever made this recipe before. That is illogical. Bread is flour and water and heat. There is no love in chemistry." Emma's smile did not fade. If anything, it grew wider. "You really believe that?" "I believe in facts. I believe in efficiency. I believe in strength." Vextal turned his 4 eyes back to the room. "Your people waste hours every day on eating. You could use that time for training, for planning, for becoming better." "Better at what?" "Surviving." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed softly. "Commander, do you want to know a secret about humans?" He did not answer, but she continued anyway. "We're really bad at surviving," she said. "We're not the strongest species. We're not the fastest. We don't have claws or armor or four eyes that can see in the dark. By all logic, we should have died out a long time ago. And yet, you did not. And yet, we did not. Emma held up the bread. You want to know why? Because we figured out that surviving isn't enough. You have to have something worth surviving for. Food, music, art, love, friendship. These things make us weak, you think. But they're actually what make us strong. They give us reasons to fight. Reasons to hope. There was that word again. Hope? Vextal said nothing. He watched Emma walk away with her tray of bread. She stopped at a table where several crew members sat. She gave them each a piece, and they thanked her like she had given them treasure. One young man took a bite and closed his eyes, making a sound of pure happiness. Weakness, Vextal told himself. That is what weakness looks like. But later that night, alone in his quarters, he could not stop thinking about the smell of that bread. He could not forget the way Emma's eyes had sparkled when she talked about her grandmother. He could not understand why these humans, with all their softness, had held their own against every enemy they had ever faced. He opened his communication device and sent an encrypted message to his superiors in the Karathi High. Command, report on human behavior, he said into the recorder. Day 21. The humans continue to show signs of dangerous hedonism. They prioritize pleasure over efficiency in all aspects of life. Their attachment to food borders on religious devotion. However, I must note an observation I cannot explain. Despite their weakness, their morale remains unusually high. They face danger with courage that does not match their physical abilities. I am continuing my investigation to identify the source of this anomaly. He ended the recording and sat in the darkness of his room. His nutrient paste sat untouched on the table. For the first time in his life, he did not feel like eating it. Something was changing inside him. Something small and quiet and dangerous. He did not have a name for it yet. But it had started the moment he smelled that bread, and he was beginning to fear that it would not stop. The explosion came without warning. One moment Vextal was walking through the lower deck. The next moment, the world turned to fire and noise and chaos. Pirates had found them in neutral space. 3 small ships against the starboard Hope. It should have been an easy fight, but one of the pirate vessels had gotten close enough to launch a direct strike at the cargo bay. The blast ripped through 2 decks before the ship's shields could respond. Vextal moved on instinct. Through the smoke and flames, he saw Emma. She was trapped under a fallen beam, her face twisted in pain. Fire was spreading toward her. She had maybe 30 seconds before it reached her. He did not think. He simply acted. His armored body crashed through the debris like it was made of paper. He grabbed the beam and lifted it with strength that surprised even him. Emma screamed as the pressure released from her legs. He pulled her free and wrapped his body around hers, just as a second explosion rocked the corridor. The fire washed over his back. His armor held, but barely. He felt the heat through the protective plates, burning his skin beneath. He did not let go of Emma. When the fire suppression systems finally activated, Vextal carried her to the medical bay himself. Dr. Pete Wong, a small man with steady hands and worried eyes, took her immediately. Vextal stood outside the door for 6 hours, waiting. He told himself he was simply protecting an asset. Emma was part of the crew. The crew was necessary for the Peace Summit. The Peace Summit was his mission. Therefore, protecting Emma was logical. He almost believed it. 3 days later, Emma woke up. Her legs were bandaged, and she would need weeks to heal completely, but she was alive. Vextal visited her room, standing stiffly by the door. "You came," she said. Her voice was weak but warm. "I am checking on the status of injured crew members. It is part of my duties, right?" Emma smiled. Even in a hospital bed, with tubes in her arms and bandages on her body, she found a way to smile. That's definitely why you've been standing outside my door for 3 days. Vextal's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. You knew I was there? The nurses told me. They thought it was sweet. It was not sweet. It was tactical. Emma laughed, then winced at the pain it caused. Okay, Commander. Whatever you say. There was a small table next to her bed. On it sat a portable gaming device. Vextal recognized the program running on the screen. It was a HFY War simulation, one of the most complex strategy games his people had ever created. He had been playing it alone in his quarters every night since he arrived on the ship. You play Conquest of Shadows? He asked, unable to hide his surprise. I've been watching you play it in the common room, Emma admitted. It looked interesting, so I downloaded a copy. I'm terrible at it, but I'm learning. Vextal moved closer to look at her screen. She was not terrible. She was actually quite good. Her strategies were unconventional, nothing like the Karathi approach. But there was a strange logic to them. You sacrifice your strong pieces too easily, he said. Sometimes you have to give something up to win something better. Vextal considered this. In Karathi strategy, you never sacrifice strength. You built it, protected it, used it to crush your enemies. The idea of willing sacrifice was foreign to him. I want to make a wager, Emma said suddenly. A wager? A bet. If I can beat you at this game, you have to try 1 bite of human food. Just 1 bite. Anything I choose. Vextal almost laughed. Almost. You cannot beat me. I have been playing this game since I was a child. I have never lost. Then you have nothing to worry about. Emma's eyes sparkled with challenge. But if you win, I promise I'll never bother you about food again. No more bread offers. No more stories about my grandmother. Complete silence on the subject forever. The offer was tempting. Vextal was tired of her constant attempts to make him eat human food. And there was no way she could defeat him. He had studied this game for decades. She had been playing for a few weeks at most. I accept your wager, he said. They began to play. The game lasted 4 hours. At first, Vextal dominated. His forces swept across the virtual battlefield with precision and power. Emma lost piece after piece, her defenses crumbling under his assault. But then something strange happened. Her losses started to slow down. Her remaining pieces began to work together in ways he had not anticipated. She was not trying to match his strength. She was using his strength against him, drawing him into traps, making him overextend. With 20 minutes left, Vextal realized he was in trouble. Emma had sacrificed her entire left flank to create an opening he had not seen. Her smallest pieces, the ones he had ignored as worthless, were now positioned to strike at his command center. He tried to recover, but it was too late. In the final move, Emma used a sacrifice play that no Karathi would ever consider. She gave up her last powerful piece to clear a path for a single scout unit. The scout reached his command center and ended the game. Vextal stared at the screen. He had lost. For the first time in his life, he had lost this game. How? He whispered. I watched you, Emma said softly. Every night for 3 weeks. I learned your patterns. You always protect your strong pieces. You never expect anyone to throw them away. So I made you think I was weak, and I waited. Vextal looked at her with new eyes. This human woman, lying in a hospital bed, had defeated him at his own game. Not through strength, not through superior numbers, through patience and observation and a willingness to sacrifice. I will honor our wager, he said finally. Emma smiled. I know you will. You're honorable. That's one of the things I like about you. I am Karathi. Honor is everything. I'm not going to collect right away, Emma said. I want to wait for the right moment. The right food. Something special. Vextal nodded slowly. He did not know what he was feeling. It was something between respect and fear, and a strange warmth he could not name. As he left her room, he thought about what she had said. Sometimes you have to give something up to win something better. He wondered what the humans had given up over their history, and he wondered what they had won. The Starboard Hope docked at Relay Station 7 for resupply. The station floated in neutral space like a metal flower, its petals made of docking bays and cargo holds. Ships from a dozen different species came and went, trading goods and information. Emma had healed enough to walk with a small limp. She found Vextal standing at a viewing window, watching the stars. His gray skin looked almost blue in the dim light. His 4 eyes reflected the distant suns like tiny mirrors. "It's time," she said. He did not turn around. "Time for what?" "The wager. I'm ready to collect." Vextal finally looked at her. He had been waiting for this moment for weeks. Part of him dreaded it. Another part, a small and secret part, was curious. He did not understand this curiosity. It felt like a betrayal of everything he was. Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. She opened it carefully, revealing a dark brown square about the size of her thumb. "What is that?" Vextal asked. "Chocolate." Emma held it up like it was precious. "My grandmother's recipe. She taught my mother, and my mother taught me. I make it by hand, using the same ingredients she used 70 years ago. Dark chocolate with a tiny bit of sea salt and vanilla." Vextal examined the brown square. It did not look dangerous. It did not look like anything special at all. Just a small piece of something brown. "This is what you chose? This small thing?" "Trust me," Emma said. "This is the right choice." Vextal took the chocolate from her hand. It felt smooth and slightly cool against his armored fingers. He brought it to his face and smelled it. The scent was rich and deep, unlike anything in his experience. It made something stir in his chest, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. "You only have to take one bite," Emma reminded him. That was the deal. He placed the chocolate in his mouth. For 1 second, nothing happened. The chocolate sat on his tongue, slowly melting from the heat of his body. Vextal wondered what all the fuss was about. It was just food. Just chemicals and atoms arranged in a certain way. There was nothing special about it. Then the flavor hit him. It started slowly, like a sunrise. A warmth spreading across his tongue. Then it grew stronger and stronger and stronger. The sweetness was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The bitterness underneath was complex and mysterious. The salt made everything sharper, more alive. The vanilla added a softness that felt like being held by someone who loved you. Vextal had never been held by someone who loved him. His knees buckled. He grabbed the wall for support, but his hands would not obey him. His 4 eyes rolled back in his head. Sounds came from his translator that it was never designed to make. They were not words. They were not even language. They were pure emotion, raw and overwhelming. The pleasure centers in his brain, dormant since birth, suddenly woke up. It was like being blind your entire life and then suddenly seeing the sun. It was too much. Far too much. His neural pathways could not handle the flood of sensation. His body began to shut down in self-defense. He collapsed. Emma screamed his name. People came running from everywhere on the station. A medical team arrived within minutes, but they looked at Vextal's strange alien body and did not know what to do. "Get Dr. Wang," Emma shouted. "Now! Someone get Dr. Wang." Pete Wang arrived 20 minutes later, out of breath and carrying a medical kit. He dropped to his knees beside Vextal and started scanning him with every tool he had. His face grew more worried with each reading. "His brain is on fire," Pete said. Not literally, but his neural activity is off the charts. It's like every pleasure receptor in his body activated at once. Can you help him? Emma's voice was breaking. I don't know. Karathi physiology is completely different from ours. Their species was genetically modified centuries ago to suppress emotional responses. They're not supposed to feel pleasure like this. What happens if you can't stop it? Pete looked at her with sad eyes. His brain will burn itself out. He'll die happy, I suppose. But he'll die. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. This was her fault. She had pushed him to try the chocolate. She had thought it would be fun, maybe even meaningful. She never imagined it could kill him. Please, she whispered. Please save him. Pete worked for 6 hours. He tried everything he could think of. He gave Vextal sedatives designed for Karathi biology. He used cooling packs to reduce his body temperature. He even tried blocking specific neural pathways with targeted electrical pulses. Slowly, so slowly, Vextal's readings began to stabilize. Emma stayed the entire time. She held his gray hand in her human one and talked to him, even though he could not hear her. She told him about her grandmother. She told him about Ohio and the little kitchen where she learned to bake. She told him about the day her mother died and how she made her grandmother's chocolate for the first time afterward, crying into the melting pot. Food isn't just fuel, she said through her tears. It's memory. It's love. It's everything we want to share with each other. I wanted to share that with you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Just before midnight, Vextal opened his 4 eyes. He saw Emma first. Her face was swollen from crying. Her hair was a mess. She looked exhausted and beautiful and more alive than anyone he had ever seen. You came back, she whispered. I did. His voice was different now, softer. Something had changed inside him. Something fundamental. Emma, yes? What was that substance called again? She almost laughed, almost cried. She was not sure which. Chocolate. Vextal was quiet for a long moment. His 4 eyes looked up at the ceiling, then back at her. There was something new in his gaze, something that had never been there before. Do you have more? The message from Karathi High Command arrived 3 days after Vextal woke up. It was not a request. It was an order. Return immediately for rehabilitation. Vextal knew what rehabilitation meant. He had seen soldiers go through it before. They entered the facility as individuals with their own thoughts and feelings. They came out as perfect weapons again, empty and obedient. The process erased everything that made you different. Everything that made you unique. Everything that made you feel. He sat alone in his quarters, reading the message over and over. His superiors had learned about his incident with the chocolate. Someone on the station had talked. Word had spread through the Karathi network like fire through dry grass. The great commander Vextal, brought low by a piece of human candy, he should feel ashamed. He should be eager to undergo rehabilitation, to have this weakness burned out of him. But when he thought about losing the memory of that chocolate, of losing the ability to taste and feel and wonder, something inside him rebelled. There was a knock at his door. Emma stood outside, looking nervous. Can I come in? He stepped aside to let her enter. She looked around his quarters with curious eyes. Everything was gray and bare. No decorations. No personal items. Nothing that suggested a person actually lived here. I heard about the message, she said quietly. How? Captain Torres told me. He's worried about you. Vextal turned away from her. He should not be. I am Karathi. I will do what my commanders order. Will you? The question hung in the air between them. Vextal did not answer. Emma moved closer. Vextal, can I tell you something? Something about humans? You always want to tell me things about humans. This is important." She sat down on the edge of his bed, the only furniture in the room besides a small desk. "We've always wondered why the Karathi were so strong. You've conquered more worlds than any other species in this part of the galaxy. You've never lost a war. You seem unstoppable. We are unstoppable." "No, you're not." "You know how I know." Emma looked up at him with serious eyes. "Because you've never fought for anything that mattered. You fight because you're ordered to. You conquer because that's what you were made to do. But you don't have anything worth dying for. And that makes you weaker than you realize." Vextal felt something stir in his chest. Anger, maybe. Or maybe something else. "Humans are different," Emma continued. "We're small and soft and fragile. We should have been conquered 1,000 times over. But whenever someone tries, we fight back with everything we have. We fight for our families, for our friends, for the little things that make life worth living. A grandmother's recipe, a child's laugh, a beautiful sunset. These things might seem small to you, but they're everything to us. These things make you weak. They give your enemies something to use against you. They make us strong," Emma said firmly. "Because when you have something to lose, you fight harder to keep it. When you have something to love, you become capable of things you never imagined." Vextal was silent for a long moment. Then he walked to his desk and opened a drawer. Inside was a small box. He opened it and looked at the contents for a long time before speaking. "When I was young, before my training was complete, I found a flower. It was growing in the cracks of a training facility, somehow surviving despite everything. It was small and yellow and completely useless. It served no purpose. It contributed nothing to the Empire." He paused. "I kept it. I hid it in my quarters and watched it grow. For 2 weeks, I was happy just knowing it existed. Then my instructors found it. They destroyed it in front of me and punished me for my weakness. They told me that attachment was the enemy of strength, that caring about anything other than the Empire was a betrayal." Emma's eyes were wet. "Vextal, I never allowed myself to feel anything after that. I became what they wanted me to be, a perfect soldier, a perfect weapon." He looked at her. "And then you gave me chocolate. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. You did not hurt me." Vextal closed the box. "You woke me up. For the first time since that flower, I felt something. I felt pleasure. I felt wonder. I felt alive." He straightened to his full height. His 4 eyes were clear and bright and filled with something new, something that looked a lot like hope. "I will not go back," he said. "I will not let them take this from me. They'll call you a traitor. Let them. They might try to kill you. Let them try." Emma stood up and walked to him. She was so much smaller than he was, so fragile and breakable. But in that moment, she seemed like the strongest person he had ever known. "You won't be alone," she said. "Captain Torres has already said he'll protect you. The whole crew will stand with you. We take care of our own. I am not one of your own. You are now." Emma smiled. "You're part of this crew, Vextal. You saved my life. You beat me at Conquest of Shadows. You ate my grandmother's chocolate and survived. That makes you family." Family. It was a word Vextal had never really understood before. The Karathi did not have families. They had units and divisions and hierarchies. They had commanders and subordinates, but not families. "The peace summit is in 1 week," he said slowly. "The Karathi High Command will be there. They will want my arrest before any negotiations can begin. So what do we do?" Vextal looked at her, and for the first time, something like a smile crossed his gray face. "We show them what I have learned. We show them what humans have that the Karathi have forgotten." "And how do we do that?" With food, Vextal said. With your grandmother's recipes. With the love you bake into every meal. We show them that pleasure is not weakness. We show them what they have been missing. Emma's smile grew wider. Commander Vextal, I think we're going to be good friends. I think so too. He looked at the message from High Command one more time, then deleted it. Now teach me about human food. I have much to learn. The Peace Summit was held on a neutral station at the edge of known space. Ships from both sides gathered like storm clouds, waiting to see if there would be peace or war. The humans came with hope in their hearts. The Karathi came with suspicion in their eyes. General Kratos led the Karathi delegation. He was old beyond measure, his gray skin scarred from 100 battles. His 4 eyes had seen empires rise and fall. He had never lost a war, never shown mercy, never once questioned his purpose. He was everything a Karathi was supposed to be. When he saw Vextal standing with the human crew, his eyes turned cold. Traitor, Kratos said. The word echoed through the meeting hall. You abandon your people for these soft creatures. You disgrace your ancestors. Captain Nick Torres stepped forward. Commander Vextal is a member of my crew. He's under human protection. Then give him to us, or there will be no peace. No, the silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. Every soldier on both sides tensed. Weapons were not drawn, but hands moved toward them. The Peace Summit was falling apart before it had even begun. Then Vextal walked forward. General Kratos, he said, his voice calm and clear. I invoke the right of demonstration. Kratos' eyes narrowed. You dare? I dare. It is my right as a Karathi soldier. I have discovered something that could change our people forever. I demand the chance to prove its value. The right of demonstration was ancient law. Any soldier could use it to prove the worth of unconventional ideas. If the demonstration failed, the soldier paid with their life. If it succeeded, the High Command had to consider the finding seriously. It was rarely used because most Karathi preferred the safety of tradition. You know the price of failure, Kratos said. I do. You would risk your life for this? Vextal looked back at Emma and the human crew. They watched him with worried eyes. Emma's hands were pressed together like she was praying. I would, he said, because what I have learned is worth dying for. Kratos studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Very well. Make your demonstration. But I expect to watch you die tonight. Emma and her team worked for hours preparing the meal. The station's kitchen was not designed for what they needed, but they made it work. Nick helped carry supplies. Dr. Pete Wong helped with the cooking, following Emma's careful instructions. Even Vextal tried to help, though he mostly got in the way. This bread is not the right color, he said, looking at a golden loaf with concern. It's perfect, Emma assured him. It looks burned. It's golden brown. That's how it's supposed to look. Karathi nutrient paste is gray. This is not gray. Emma laughed and pushed him gently out of the kitchen. Go set up the tables. Leave the cooking to me. The dining hall was transformed. Emma had insisted on tablecloths and candles and flowers, things that seemed foolish and unnecessary to Vextal. But he was learning that sometimes the unnecessary things mattered most. The Karathi delegation arrived exactly on time. There were 12 of them, including General Kratos. They sat at the long table like statues, their faces showing nothing. We do not require food, Kratos said. We have eaten our nutrient paste. Please, Vextal said. This is the demonstration. You must eat. The general's eyes were hard. If this is poison, you will die screaming. It is not poison. It is something much more powerful. Emma and her team brought out the food. Simple dishes. Bread still warm from the oven. Soup made from vegetables grown in the ship's garden. sliced fruits arranged in colorful patterns. And at the end, a small piece of chocolate cake for each person. The humans ate first. They wanted to show the Karathi that the food was safe. But more than that, they wanted to show them what eating could be. Emma told stories while she ate. She talked about her grandmother and the little kitchen in Ohio. She talked about family, dinners where everyone laughed and argued and loved each other. She talked about the way food could bring strangers together and turn them into friends. The Karathi watched everything. They saw the smiles. They heard the laughter. They watched crew members pass dishes to each other, sharing food from their own plates. Why do they do that? One young Karathi soldier asked. Why share when they could keep more for themselves? Because sharing is part of the joy, Vextal answered. Finally, the Karathi began to eat. They started with the bread, tearing small pieces and placing them carefully in their mouths. The young soldier who had asked the question went still. His eyes widened. His hands began to shake. The soldier next to him had a similar reaction. Then the next and the next. General Krathos was the last to eat. He tore off a piece of bread with ancient hands and brought it to his mouth. His 4 eyes closed as he chewed. A single tear rolled down his weathered face. It was the first tear he had shed in 200 years. What is this? He whispered. What have you done to us? I have shown you what we lost, Vextal said. Centuries ago, our ancestors modified our genetics to make us better warriors. They suppressed our ability to feel pleasure because they thought it would make us weak. But they were wrong. He stood and walked to stand beside Emma. Humans are not strong because they feel nothing. They are strong because they feel everything. They love and laugh and cry and hope. These emotions do not weaken them. They give them reasons to fight, reasons to survive, reasons to live. Krathos looked at the bread in his hand. His eyes were wet with tears he did not understand. The war has to end, Vextal continued. Not because we are losing, but because we are not truly living. We have forgotten what it means to enjoy existence. We have forgotten what it means to have something worth protecting. The general was quiet for a long time. The other Karathi watched him, their faces showing emotions they had never experienced before. I remember, Krathos finally said. His voice was soft and broken and somehow beautiful. I remember being young, before the training, before they took everything away. I remember my mother singing to me. I remember laughing. He looked at Vextal with new eyes. You have shown me what we have lost, and I do not want to forget again. The peace treaty was signed that night. It was the beginning of something new, something that would take years to fully unfold. The Karathi had much to learn about feeling again. Dr. Pete Wang developed a gradual exposure program to help them experience pleasure safely, without the overwhelming shock that had almost killed Vextal. Months later, Vextal stood in the kitchen of the Starboard Hope. Emma was teaching him to cook. He was terrible at it. He had burned 3 batches of pancakes already. Flip it, Emma said. Gently. Vextal flipped the pancake. It landed half in the pan and half on the stove. That was not gentle, Emma observed. I am Karathi. We do not do gentle. But he was smiling. It was still strange to see a Karathi smile, but Vextal was getting better at it. He scraped the ruined pancake into the trash and poured fresh batter into the pan. Why do you keep trying? He asked. I am clearly not suited for this. Because cooking is about more than making food, Emma said. She moved to stand beside him, watching the batter bubble in the pan. It's about patience. About caring enough to try again when you fail. About creating something with your own hands that you can share with others. Vextal thought about this. Then he flipped the pancake again. This time, it landed perfectly in the pan. I did it, he said, surprised. You did. Emma grinned at him. Now do it 50 more times, and you might be ready to make breakfast for the crew. Vextal looked at the pancake in the pan. It was golden brown, just like Emma's bread. It was small and simple and completely unnecessary. And it was the most beautiful thing he had ever made. "Joy is not weakness," he said quietly. "No," Emma agreed. "It's the reason to keep fighting." Vextal carefully slid the pancake onto a plate. He looked at it for a long moment. This small proof that a warrior could learn to create instead of destroy. Then he took a bite. It was terrible. He had forgotten to add sugar. But as Emma laughed and showed him where he went wrong, Vextal realized something important. The pancake did not matter. What mattered was that he had tried. What mattered was that he had someone to share his failure with. What mattered was that tomorrow he would try again. And that was enough. That was everything.